my friend, my buddy, my pal, my equal. Am I allowed to say that? I don't know if we're actually equals. Are we the same, though? I mean, are you an extension of me? Or are you your own being? There's a reason why I'm asking you this. Because it's what I want to talk with you about today. I want to talk to you about characters. Now, every writer on the planet has experienced this. Now, it could come from a beta reader, an editor, or hopefully not, a reader who has paid for a published book. What I'm talking about is that inevitable pain in the tuchus when someone tells you all of your characters sound the same. We've all experienced it. Let us not kid ourselves. And it is worth bashing your head against a wall. Think about it. Just think about it. When someone tells you that your characters all sound the same, that means that, first and foremost, they probably had a whole hell of a lot of trouble discerning who was talking when and where. Unless you have completely littered your book with dialogue tags. And no one wants to see a book filled with dialogue tags. He said, she said, he spoke loudly. Don't do that. Dialogue tags are they're a great tool, but when overused, they completely water down the strength of your writing. So the goal should be, from the onset of writing a book, writing characters that are completely different from one another. That sounds easy, right? It's not. I mean, it is. It is once you kind of, once you have the experience. But there are ways that you can make this a little easier. And I'm going to try to help you know how to more easily write characters that are different than one another. To begin with, now this becomes problematic when you write like I do, when you just, everything is very organic. So you're writing along. Oh, I need a new character. Blam, bleh, new character. Right there, right on the page, new character. But if you're just doing that, if you're just tossing new characters into the mix randomly, whenever they're necessary, how do you make them different? How do you make sure that they're not going to sound like the main character or the secondary character or whatever? Well, you can. I mean, obviously you can base a character on somebody you know. And that's a great way to start. You can also, one of the things that I like to do, not all the time, sometimes, is even before I write that first line of dialogue or that first description of a character, I choose a name that's going to help to describe that character. Even if it's a nickname, maybe the character's nickname is Speedy. Why is he called Speedy? Maybe he's called Speedy because he talks really fast and he talks in really short sentences. And that's a great way to go, okay, so this character named Speedy he never really gets he has trouble talking in long sentences. So he might, who knows? He just, well, you know, everybody knows that person. And that's a great thing to add to your work. When a reader is reading a book and as they're reading this, they know that character. They have that character in their life. It could be their best friend. It could be their spouse, a relative. They know that character. And it makes it really easy for them to imagine. Another thing that one of the things that I like to use is rhythm. Every human being speaks with a different rhythm. See what I did there? Every human being speaks with a different rhythm. And rhythm is more of a challenging tool to use, so you might want to play around with it. But if you read David Mamet, who is a great American playwright, when you read him, everything he writes is very modern jazz. Between short and long sentences and punctuation, he very clearly, as he's writing, he has, I don't know if he does it intentionally, but you can tell there's this element of jazz to his writing. So you could have a character that is very jazzy in their dialogue, or very florid in their dialogue. And you can have characters that are very simplistic and to the point. But one of the things, so if you write like I do and you write organically and you come to the point where you have to introduce a new character, stop. Don't just throw that character into the mix. Stop. Ask yourself, what's the purpose of this character? And sometimes the purpose of this character will dictate what they're like. And once you've answered that question, what is this character about? What does this character love? What is this character's past? So let's say, for example, your main character is driving down the street and he's speeding and he gets pulled over by a cop. And in the description, the main character looks in the rearview mirror and the policeman has got his thumbs in his belt buckle or in his belt, and he's sauntering toward the car. He's slowly sauntering toward the car. And the main character rolls down his window. The cop tips his hat up or down. He looks into the window, and then he speaks. But see, even right now, you know exactly how that policeman sounds. Because you have set it up. You have given the reader a description and the ability to picture how that cop sounds in their mind. So the window is rolled down, the cop tips the hat, looks into the window. "Excuse me, sir, do you know how fast you were going?" Yes, it's hard. You can't, because you have the written word, it's not the spoken word. You can't actually, it's hard to convey a dialect. I mean, you could say he speaks in a southern dialect or whatever, but you can build that up. And even if that cop is just there for that one quick scene. "Excuse me, sir, y'all know how fast you were moving?" And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the cop is southern. And it's those tiny little details that help us to differentiate from our characters. And we have to have that. Because if you don't have that, all of a sudden, you just have this wash of words. Let's take, for example, the work I'm doing, the book I'm working on now. Beautiful Complication. I did finally remember that second word. It's Beautiful Complication is the name of the book. I'm not going to tell you what the book's about, but there's one main character and one secondary character. And a romance begins to blossom between the two of them. And the main character, his name is Tak, and he's pretty intelligent. And the secondary character's name's Angela. And I gave her the name Angela because she kind of eventually becomes his angel. And I don't want to give away too many details, but Angela, whereas Tak is very grounded in a sort of reality, and you sometimes wonder how much joy he's had in his life prior to the circumstances that throw him into this story. But you know, even though Angela is embroiled in the circumstances of this story, there is a joy that emulates from her. It just bubbles out of her. And so her speech patterns tend to reflect that joy, whereas Tak's speech patterns tend to reflect his groundedness, so she's kind of uplifting and he's kind of down. Not down as in depressed, but he is cemented and centered to the ground, and she is kind of up in the clouds. And what's interesting is that I had no idea what Angela was going to be. I actually had no idea that Angela was going to be in the book, because I thought the book was going to be something completely different. And then when I threw her into the mix just for a specific thing, and I realized very quickly that the entire driving force of the book changed, or of the story changed because of her introduction, I realized she had to stay. So that bubbly nature would turn into a great foil for the main character. So it's not really just about helping the reader understand who's talking it at some point. The differentiation between these characters also serves as point and counterpoint to one another. Because if I had written Tak and Angela as pretty much the same kind of character, only different genders, things would get really boring. And I wouldn't have much to work with. I mean, sure, many of us talk to ourselves, and sometimes some of us talk more to ourselves, and sometimes some of us answer ourselves. And so having two characters in a book does kind of eventually become like that, someone just talking to themselves. And we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that people are talking to other people, and that there is enough difference between these people to make it interesting and to give it depth and to give it life. Because ultimately, and I know that this is one of the things that I feel very, very strongly about, is that the driving force for a story is character relationship. Without relationship, nothing goes forward. Everything dies. I'm not talking literal, I'm talking metaphorical in these books. Everything dies without relationships in books and theater and film and all of that. But you just want to make sure that, and you can also, every one of us has different relationships with different people, and all of those relationships are different. You can have two besties, but the relationships are still different based on certain things, based on the past, based on the present, based on the future, whatever. You can have, for example, you can have three people, whether they be male, female, doesn't matter. And those three people are all best friends. But between those three people, two of those people kind of secretly have a crush on one another. And it's never been spoken, but they have that there. And because of that, those two people are going to treat, so this person right here is going to treat this one who this person has a crush on differently than this one. They're even going to communicate differently. This person is going to choose different words with this character than they would with this character. Because this character has a crush on this character, and this character doesn't have a crush on this character. And this character is going to speak to this character maybe in the same way that they would speak to this person, but that's not going to be the case, because something in these relationships is going to help to differentiate. Maybe this character's older than this character. So maybe this character treats this character with more respect than does this character. You see what I'm talking about? So the differentiation between characters does not or should not just be limited in the way we speak. It should also infect the way we think about people and how we react to people and how we treat people. So there's all sorts of ways to make these characters different and to make them sound different than one. Because sound different doesn't always just have to be the way they speak. It can be the way they act. This character might react to problems. This character might be a type A personality. And when a problem hits, it's like bam, 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 gotta fix it, gotta fix it, gotta fix it. This character might not be a type A person. When a problem arises, they may say, I'll figure it out. I'll get to it. So there's a huge difference right there. Dimension. Characters must have dimension. Or maybe come from a different dimension. I don't know, whatever. Whatever makes the characters different. See what I'm throwing down, Muse? Are you picking it up? You picking it up while I'm throwing down, Muse? It's like you and I have this conversation together, and I talk differently with you than I do with... I don't have any more muses. You're my only muse. I don't know what I'm talking about. I talk differently to you than I talk to my editor. Let's just say that. Of course, with my editor, it's mostly just about words. It's just mostly about the particular word that we're talking about at that moment. So maybe that's not a fair comparison. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. I would talk differently to Frankenstein than I would with the werewolf, with the Wolfman. Right? With the Wolfman, I would just run. I'd run as fast as I could. With Frankenstein, wouldn't have to necessarily run because Frankenstein isn't really that fast. So, if you're dealing with Frankenstein and werewolf, Wolfman, whichever one you want to call him, there will be time during the running away from Frankenstein, there will be time maybe to turn around and taunt a little bit. Hey, what's up, Frank? Maybe you should get some sneakers next time so you can run a little faster instead of those big clunky shoes. I don't know, maybe. Who knows? You're not going to turn around and taunt Wolfman because the Wolfman's probably barreling down on you, with claws out, ready to rip off your flesh. What's Frankenstein going to do? He's going to lumber around, and eventually he might catch you. Maybe he was built from a really strong guy who rip your arms off. I don't know. But anyway, you get what I'm talking about. And Frankenstein and the werewolf, they're not going to talk to each other at all. They're going to attack each other. No words. Never mind. Doesn't matter. Anyway, Muse, that's all I have to say right now. Because I have so much stuff to do. In fact, I also have a book to proofread. But I really need to find someone else to proofread it. I've already proofed it once. That's not enough. Never enough. Anyway, I don't want to get into another discussion with you. Because I'm toast. Muse, thank you for listening to me. You know this. I don't need to know why I need to say it every stinking time. But I do. Why? Because Muse, you are awesome.